By the time I was 15, I was a criminal. Like, that's the best way to describe it. I regularly just stick-ups, robberies, assaults, whatever, selling drugs, whatever I could get my hands on. Anything I could do that was wrong, I would pretty much do it. I had a very tumultuous home life. My parents weren't the safest people to be around at the time, emotionally or otherwise. And so I would spend as little time home as possible. I didn't feel safe at home.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast, and this week's guest is a force to be reckoned with. He's a man who faced tumultuous adolescence marked by violence and the need for survival, finding himself entangled in a life of crime, drugs, and addiction from an early age. Against the odds, he turned his life around, holding black belts in both judo and jiu-jitsu. He's now on a mission to empower men to create clarity out of chaos by harnessing their own strength, confidence in order to master their mindset through his unique signature martial arts mindset program.
There's a certain humility that comes, I think, with that level of violence. You also see the frailty of human life and how easy it all can just be taken away, and how much luck is involved in with the fact that we're still here. We're designed for progress. I got it in my head really, really young that in order to get along in the world, people have to be afraid of you. I think the first thing a person needs to do is deal with their pain. If you're not growing, you're eroding.
Join me in welcoming Mr. Eric the Gentleman to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Eric the Gentleman, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I got here early.
Eric the Gentleman, when I looked at your pictures and watched a bunch of your videos, where did the name Eric the Gentleman come from?
So when I was in my 20s, I was a nightclub doorman. I was the smallest nightclub doorman. I was like 20 pounds lighter than I am now. I was like 160 pounds. And I liked the ladies quite a bit back then. And so it was sort of a parody, not really not really an earned nickname, but it was just sort of a joke that my friends gave. And when Instagram started in like 2009, I was just Eric the Gentleman. I thought it was funny because it was quite the opposite of the truth at the time. Right.
Was it quite the opposite of how you was when you was a doorman as well?
Yes. Right. Yeah. So mid 2000s, New York. It was a time where, just before The Ultimate Fighter had come out, so people didn't really know what MMA was or anything. So it was just the biggest, most jacked guy was kind of assumed to be the toughest guy. It's probably not too dissimilar to like how doors were, and I know London had its era with clubs and doormen.
I was a doorman
like
in the late 80s, so I know exactly what
you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So guys were just monsters. They were so big, cartoon characters. I'm 5'6" and 160 pounds at the time, but I'm trained and I can fight. And so yeah, it made for some interesting times, that's for sure. And I had a chip on my shoulder, early 20s. Like, if I got to take some 300-pound gorilla and turn him upside down in front of a crowd of people, then that's what I was going to do. And it was a fun time. I probably would have done a few things different if I could go back, but fond memories.
All right. I was reading your Instagram, which is very worth checking out for anyone, and we'll put the links in there. But there was an interesting statement I read, and it said, "No one will ever know the violence it took to be this gentle." What does that statement mean to you?
So there's people that exist that some people might go, oh, they're very gentle, but I would call them harmless, right? And there's a difference between harmless and gentle. I think gentle would be comes from a choice, right? When you have the capacity for violence and you choose to be gentle, I think there's something to that's a little bit more admirable, I say, than somebody that's just harmless. I don't think it's admirable or like a great trait to not embrace your strength as a human being, right? So there's that part of it first, right? I think seeking strength, as in just climbing the next rung on the ladder, is an admirable human trait. I think that's something that we should all strive for. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't care where you're at on the ladder. Just reach for the rung that's above your head. I think progress is really important for us to feel our best. So there's that part of it. The other part is there's something about men that have seen extreme violence and lived extreme violence, and if they choose to use that experience as a path for transformation, you'll find that they're very gentle, trustworthy souls, right? And you can almost sense the danger and trustworthy in them at the same time. Like, wow, this guy could do a lot of harm, but he chooses not to. And he actually chooses to do the opposite. He actually chooses to be a protector. He actually chooses to be somebody that nurtures the community around him, and not in a strong, weak sense, but in the sense of, I don't know, what many of us might consider like the ideal father role, right? I think like the ideal father role to me, which I didn't have, was somebody that's going to hand in hand walk us into danger, and like, so that they can show us how strong we can be too. And so, yeah, I've been around gangsters, killers, the people that have been around extreme violence, and those that come out the other end and don't let that consume them, there's often a gentleness about them.
I've noticed a similar thing with that type of person I've met, that I almost wonder if it's that they've also fairly humbled, because they realize that through all of that extreme, no matter what situation they're in, they always also need to respect the situation. And sometimes you probably get the people where there's a bit of an ego, and they're like, you've probably just not been through enough to recognize that's a stupid thing to do in any situation.
I think you're 100% accurate. Yeah, there's a certain humility that comes, I think, with that level of violence. You also see the frailty of human life, and how easy it all can just be taken away, and how much luck is involved in the fact that we're still here.
Jiu-jitsu, we were chatting about that earlier. I talk about it a lot because my family's into it, and I guess that's quite a humbling sport. In your post, you talk about that it being almost like 99% failure. You fail a lot. How does something like jiu-jitsu shape your outlook on life in general?
Well, for me personally, my journey with jiu-jitsu was interesting because I came in with a heavy wrestling background. So jiu-jitsu was actually never hard for me in terms of like, I was winning from the beginning, even against more advanced students. But my attitude at the time was like, I was just looking to prove myself in the beginning. I was not looking to improve. I wanted to take what I already had, add some tools, and I was just focused on maintaining a certain idea about myself, right? So I had no humility in the beginning. And through practical experience in my fight career, I saw where that was limiting me, and I also saw where that was limiting me in my personal life. And so over time, jiu-jitsu got to be a mirror for me to reflect on how I show up there to do this very hard thing, and how I work on my vulnerabilities. How do I protect my vulnerabilities? How do I deal with the fact of when failure comes? How do I deal with it? Do I shy away from moments that present opportunities for failure or challenge? Do I embrace them? What is my mindset when I'm presented with an opportunity for failure? And I didn't like what I was honestly answering back to myself. I'm scared to lose. I don't want to look bad. I don't want to drive home feeling like I'm not who I thought I was or who I need to be. And these are all reflections that I would have regularly. Man, I've been very lucky that, if for nothing else, throughout my life, I've had the ability to honestly reflect. And so it's not a given that just because you do jiu-jitsu that you're going to use it as a path of personal development. Some people just use it for exercise, and there's nothing wrong with that. Right? Some people do jiu-jitsu, they're really good at it, and they're still assholes, right? And then there are people who choose to use that path as a mirror to reflect upon. And I think we can do that with anything. I think what makes jiu-jitsu maybe a little bit different than just your average life experience is high stress environments give you an opportunity to see yourself in just a little bit deeper than you might normally be able to in the day-to-day. Like, you're regularly being presented with sort of extreme circumstances, and then reflecting on yourself and how you are being within those extreme circumstances.
The wait is over. Our new Escape Fitness catalog has landed. This is the essential guide to all of the latest product innovations that are shaping the future of functional training. Bigger and better than ever, this year's catalog is 190 pages, jam-packed with everything from eye-catching, bespoke functional training frames to some of the latest strength training equipment. So sign up today to receive the digital version today, or be one of the lucky few to receive a hardbound printed copy straight to your door. So what are you waiting for? Go to escapefitness.com now. Let's go into that a little bit deeper, because I think, as you said, there's jiu-jitsu is probably a metaphor for a lot of other things. But how do you think we should approach life? Because the general feeling is that you work fairly hard, you get to a position, and you kind of kick your feet back and you get comfortable, and it's like, okay, I've kind of got where I want. Now, is that as far as you could take yourself and everything else? Who knows? But you kind of get to this level of comfort, and then you tend to stop there. And using your metaphor and seeing a lot of people that have been successful in other areas, it's almost like, okay, once you get there, now it's like, what's next? And in some ways you kind of think, well, they must be crazy people, because they're never happy and they're constantly moving forward. But then on other ways, a lot of times those people tend to be, although they're constantly going through difficulties, they seem to be fairly happy, they seem to be fairly together, and they seem to be striving for something that's a little bit bigger. So how would you sort of explain to people that are listening, that, because you've been through a lot of tough things in your life, the almost like this sort of, the hard way is a better way than looking for the easy way?
Oh, I love that you asked this question, because it's something that's near and dear to me, to my work, my actual profession now. How many guys do you know that got successful financially and put themselves in a position where business is kind of on autopilot, and they didn't want to really have the responsibility of kind of like continuing to grow things? So they've got money coming in pretty steady, life's on cruise control, and you'll see them really just start giving into like their lower nature, right? Women or drugs or gambling or whatever. Like, these guys fall apart when they don't have a mountain to climb, or they lack purpose, right? And so, and I've noticed that even in my own, I started my coaching business leaving the MMA world, and all of a sudden it got successful really fast. And all of a sudden I've got more money than I've ever had in my life. And then the business was running its, I've got my clients, I'm in a phase of non-growth, and I have all this time, a lot of idle time. And I start to notice, like, I don't necessarily like how I'm handling all this idle time. Now, I'm a person that meditates every day. I'm a person that takes my stillness very, very seriously and my inner work very seriously. And still, because I was in this period where I was not growing in a way that I found sufficient to me, a lot of my lesser nature started to kick in. I started to see myself more easily distracted, more taken off the path, more diverted from my purpose, right? I still show up and meet my responsibilities, but I didn't like how I was operating. So it's kind of a roundabout way to answer your question, is my life needs to be a reflection of my values, right? And I think when it's not a reflection of my values, I feel off, I suffer for it, right? There's an anxiety that comes along with that for me. So it's really important for me to be intentional about the way that I live my life, okay? So there's got to be, like, when I get up on a given day, it's like, okay, I'm going to tap in with my relationships, because that's really important. And all important in business and important in my real life. If I don't have relationships, I don't have anything. I believe that firmly. Am I growing and learning new skills, right? Am I expanding my ability to serve? I think that's really important. Am I maintaining the tools that I already have? Like, that's really important. Okay. And so, like, I look at my life through that scope, because I know what happens when I fall out of that template. Like, everything starts to fall apart. Right.
Do you when you are getting a plateau, whether it's a relationship, in your business, in your sport, do you get to that stage and then you then construct some way of putting yourself into a difficult position to go to another level then?
I think what happens for me is that, a lot of times the plateau is necessary. I think it's going to come, like, as much as I don't enjoy the plateaus, they happen. And I think it's a path of anything, any part of mastery. When you're on a path of mastery in anything, there's going to be lots of plateaus. In fact, you may spend more time in plateaus than any other place, I think, sometimes. I think we're designed for progress. And so, we I think people feel their best. I know I feel my best when I'm in progress, in pursuit of progress. Not even that I'm the imagine like when I get here, then it's going to be this. It's just, no, it's just the perpetual state, learning and growing, right? So do I make things up? I answer the call that comes to me, right? I really feel, and maybe this is a little woo-woo, I think my life has always given me the exact circumstances that I need to learn whatever it is that I need to learn. So with that, I, recently hit that kind of plateau business-wise. Things are going good, but I want to grow. I want to scale. I start talking to a friend, and he's actually in the exact business of where the tools and skills I needed in order to grow my business. So we get into talking. I give him a bunch of money because I want his tools that he has. And we sit down, we start talking about what this is going to look like to implement in the business. I feel the overwhelm, right? I feel the, fuck, this is scary. Because the call to action for me is, these are the skills I need in order to grow that I don't currently have. Life is asking me to leave what's comfortable, okay, go on this journey to become the guy that has these skills that can implement them into his business so he can serve at a greater capacity, right? So it's like, I would challenge you to reflect on your own experiences. You've grown a lot of stuff over the years, right? From here and made it a thing. And who you were at the beginning was not who you were at the end. I can guarantee it, right? And who you're becoming in the middle of that, it's like, well, I can only see 5 feet in front of me, and that's the 5 feet that I'm taking. I want to see a mile down the road, right? But sometimes it's impossible. And it's like that uneasiness of doing that, man, that's like that pressure that comes on with that. It really lights me up. I can't live there forever, but I do enjoy it.
Do you in terms of things that you would do outside of that particular goal, and there's a number of, it could be relationship, business, etc. But do you look to put yourself in difficult positions to train for that? So whether that could be doing something recreationally, so you're just getting used, because there's a lot of, I'm reading this stuff, and I know you're sort of connected with him, but I'm reading this book with my kids about Jocko.
Oh yeah.
And I think you train at a similar
gym. He owns the gym that I teach at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sort of looking at some of the ideas and talking to my kids about it. And it's very much a case of looking to put yourself in uncomfortable positions and enjoying that. Do you subscribe to that philosophy, which, if the more you can push yourself and get used to being uncomfortable, the easier it is to deal with those difficult situations? Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a trained muscle. It's right. A trained muscle. If I'm getting in the ice bath every day, it's not that hard. Still a little bit of, I don't really want to do this, but it's way easier to get in than if I haven't done an ice bath in a little while. So I think that same analogy is pretty much fits across the board. I think it's important to expose ourselves to challenge regularly. I think man, woman, child, I think it's really important. I think if we don't expose ourselves to challenge, we become fragile. And it's not a good thing or an admirable thing to become fragile. To not be able to handle challenge it's not an admirable thing, right? And it's not like, and I'm never a person that thinks like might is right, like the biggest, baddest, strongest should get all the things. I don't think that's, but I think, man, like strength is something that we should all pursue. And to some degree or another, emotional strength is something that we should all pursue, right? It's like, I think it's the reason divorce rates are so high. People aren't willing to go through hard things together. It's just so easy to, well, this is hard. This must be the wrong one. Let me get a new one. That happens all the time. And right, yeah, sometimes it's just not a fit. Maybe you guys got together at a point in time where, yeah, we weren't aligned and we decided to call it quits. But man, I think more often than not, it's not necessary. Like I remember early in my marriage thinking, this is so hard. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And just wanting to be single because it was so hard to learn how to be in a marriage, when I'd been a single guy my entire life, right? And then, so that's what I wanted to do. What I did was get the tools necessary to be able to be in a marriage, to be able to be in a relationship, because I didn't have them from my upbringing. I didn't have them from anybody around me. I had to go out and seek that knowledge, right? So I think there's, subject yourself to the things that are hard regularly, that are sort of aligned with your life's path and what your goal and mission is. And also pay attention to when life gives you the call, right? The call to like step into this next version of yourself, right? Sometimes it's through tragedy, right? the breadwinner in the family goes down and you got to step up and be that guy. And like, you're not currently that guy, but you got to become that guy to become the breadwinner. Or it's an opportunity, and an opportunity that this would take me to a better place, but it's also scary and there's some risk involved. And it's like, I really like paying attention to when life is offering me those opportunities.
You've got a real life metaphor. From what I understand, when you was in your late teens, early 20s, my guess is that you would have probably described yourself as a different person to what you would do today. So to provide the listeners a bit of context, like who were you then, and who did you become, and how did you become someone different?
Okay. So from 13 on, I was pretty much headed down a bad path. By the time I was 15, I was a criminal. Like, this is the best way to describe it. I regularly just stick-ups, robberies, assaults, whatever, selling drugs, whatever I could get my hands on. Anything I could do that was wrong, I would pretty much do it. I had a very tumultuous home life. My parents weren't the safest people to be around at the time, emotionally or otherwise. And so I would spend as little time home as possible. I didn't feel safe at home. The only time I felt safe at home was when no one was home. And yeah, I'd go around the corner and there would be some, older guys hanging out, playing basketball, smoking weed, drinking, doing that type of stuff. And I started, hanging around these guys. I admired them. They were the tough guys in the neighborhood and they didn't seem scared. And I was like, I admired that. And so before they even let me hang out with them, I would just kind of like watch them, and just like, spent a lot of time in my head in fantasy and just kind of wished I was one of these guys, and liked how, man, people treat these guys different, and like people are afraid of these guys. So I got it in my head really, really young that in order to get along in the world, people have to be afraid of you. And so I started creating a character, and this character was violent and oftentimes inebriated on as much drugs and alcohol as possible. And, by the time I was 17, I'm homeless, dropped out of school, strung out, in and out of jails, psych wards. It was a mess, right? Living in the woods. It was just like not a good time in my life. And trying to get sober, I tried to get sober for like 6 years. I started attending 12-step meetings at 17. I finally got sober when I was 23. Numerous overdoses and brushes with death over and over again. And yeah, I was in a lot of pain. That's probably the best way to describe it. I was just in so much pain, and the way I lived my life outwardly was a reflection of that pain. I was just taking out my pain on the world, and numbing it as much as I could with whatever I could fit into my body at the time.
And what was the shift with you? Was that more of a realization just over time, or did something happen to you that caused quite a transformation, I guess?
There was a period, man, I was maybe 18 or 19. My first couple attempts at sobriety, they were like kind of like half-assed. I was like, all right, I clearly have a substance abuse problem, but I'm not ready to get sober yet, but I need a break because I'm going to die soon. I had 3 really close brushes where I nearly lost my life in like a 6-week time span. So and I don't remember the order that they were in, but I got drunk one night coming home from some clubs in the Hamptons, and my friends dropped me off at my parents' house. And instead of going into my parents' house, I wandered over to the train tracks that were near the house and just fell asleep on the train tracks. And I was in a blackout, and I generally don't wake up out of blackouts, right? But I guess the vibration of the train coming down the tracks, like I just kind of sat up. I saw, the bright light coming towards us, like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I just happened to fall sideways off the train tracks and not get killed, luckily. I was like, oh, that was a close one, right? And I might have gone to a meeting the next day and been scared, and then, shortly after, I'm back out there. And then I overdose. I went to a party. The guy that was hosting the party was selling ecstasy, brought me into his bedroom, sold me 2 pills, but made the mistake of showing me where his stash and all his cash were. I remember going back into his room, eating all the pills, and taking all his cash. And then my friends found me convulsing and slamming my head off a dashboard repeatedly, so they didn't know what was going on, so they called the ambulance. I woke up handcuffed to a hospital bed while I'm on felony probation. for an armed robbery, and I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble. Like I'm handcuffed, but they just handcuffed me to keep me from moving in a way that would hurt myself. So I was like, oof, thank God. I had like one shoe on, and I woke up with like a pocket full of money that I didn't have the night before. And so yeah, so like even from that, I leave the overdose. I go home. I take a taxi home. One shoe on. I get two shoes on my feet, and I go out drinking that night, like literally like no fear. And then not too long after that, I was nearly murdered. I had robbed a couple of gentlemen. They gave me some money to get them some drugs, and I spent it with my friends on a night out. I go back to their house the next night while they're having a party. I let the entire party know after a little while that I robbed these guys and they're not getting their money, and proceed to destroy their house. Right? I did some really, really terrible things to their house, and pissing all over their house, and just being a tyrant. And they waited for me to pass out. My friends tried to get me to leave. I refused to leave. There was something in that frame of mind that I was in then. I used to love to humiliate the people that I was victimizing, because I was victimizing criminals mostly. So I didn't care. I didn't think it was wrong. And they waited for me to go to sleep or pass out. And then they came in while I was passed out. Each of them had a metal Louisville, which is a metal bat, and just went to work on my face. So if you see this little scar right here, this was hanging off my face. My face was destroyed. My teeth were destroyed. I managed to wrestle my way out to the street. They continued to beat me, and a car started coming down the street. And so I managed to fend off most of the blows to my head continually. The blows were directly to the face initially, and I jumped on the hood of the car. And it was a kid from high school that I knew, that I actually robbed this kid a couple weeks earlier, but he gave me a ride home. And so all this happens in a very short period of time. I'm a little hazy on exactly, but it's like 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm going to die soon. And I don't want to die. And it still took me another 4 years to get sober, but the seed was planted. I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how to stop. I wanted to stop. I knew I was capable of more. I just couldn't stop. I didn't have any identity outside of that. I had discovered wrestling in high school for a year and a half while they let me in high school. And then I got kicked out of high school, and I just had this dream. One day I'm going to go back to training and wrestling and martial arts. And I think that hope is really what kept me alive. Like when I look back at my life, out of the group of kids that I grew up with, like 5 of them are dead, mostly from drugs and alcohol. Some of them are still selling crack, like my age, 42 years old, still selling crack in the neighborhood. Yeah. So it's like, wow. How did I not, I was the worst. How did I get where I'm at? I think I always, foolishly or otherwise, believed there was more possible for me. And I think like the belief of possibility is what can get somebody out of a bad situation. I think that's why, like, if you go to the ghetto and like all people see is one way of living, and all they think that they think that only that is possible, I think they're just going to repeat what they think is possible. And then you get somebody that, for whatever reason, can see that there's more possible, and that person will be able to move beyond their circumstances.
Do you think someone could have spoken to you at that time? Because I know what I was.
Nope.
No. And so it kind of goes on, because there's probably a lot of people, I nowhere near what you do, but I relate to that, and I relate to no matter who speaks to you. Like, you've either got the bad people you're around who speak to you are probably not going to give you good advice, and then you've got the good people that you probably don't want to listen to anyway. So thinking about others that could be in that situation, how do you get out of it outside of some sort of internal realization then?
I think the first thing a person needs to do is deal with their pain. Whether it's through therapy or like, we need support to deal with our pain. That cannot be done alone. Cannot be done alone. And I'll say this as a blanket statement. When I say we, it's intentionally, right? So we as people, our hurt comes from relationships, early relationships or whatever. The healing has to happen in relationships too. It doesn't mean you don't have to do your own work. You absolutely have to do your own work, but it's incomplete without healing in relationships, right? It's like how safe we feel around people very much determines our behavior with people, right? If I felt safe around people, I wouldn't have had the need to continually victimize people. It's the only way I could feel safe, right? So it's pathological, and it's obviously completely antisocial and not not how I'd want somebody to behave, but I understand it, right? So it's like I'm responsible for it, but I'm also empathetic and I understand it. So yeah, we have to, I think people have to deal with their pain. And like, that's a beginning. That whatever catharsis needs to have happen, whatever understanding people can need to have to get to just a base level. And then from there, it's like, okay, now start doing things that are esteemable that you can start to feel good about, start to build your life in a direction. And sometimes people do it in a little bit different path. Like I started building my life in a direction first and then dealt with my pain. And maybe, maybe that's what I had to do at the time. So it's like, yeah, pick one or the other. I think I would have liked to been able to deal with my pain first and then start to build my life. I think it would actually streamline things. But yeah, if I look back at my own path, it was starting to build my life up first, right? I had to get help for substance abuse. Like nothing was going to happen while I was strung out. Nothing. So if you got a substance abuse problem and you're listening, like you got to deal with that first. Like nothing's going to happen in a better direction, relationships or otherwise, while you're strung out. So deal with that. Okay. And then, then you can start doing those two things, dealing with your pain, building your life in accordance to your values. What do you actually want to create, bring to the world and offer as a valuable contributing member to society?
You went, from what I understood, you went through the 12 steps program.
Lots. Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Well, I'll say this. The 12 steps saved my life for sure. Like I would not have lived. The people in the 12-step programs really took me in. I mean, dude, I was so angry when I finally got sober because I didn't have my pacifier anymore. I didn't have the thing that was numbing me out. So I'd be sitting in a meeting and I'd be so angry, like radiating, seething anger. Each seat on the side of me would be empty all the time. And then, there was this crazy guy. I can't say his name out of anonymity, but I'd love to. God bless this guy. There was this crazy dude that would hang out with me and drive me around. This guy was nuts, but he was sober a couple of years. He would get out, have fights in the middle of traffic. Like he was dealing with his own demons, but dude, he made sure to pick me up, bring me to meetings. Like this guy, and it's like that community aspect was really important. Just like a lot of us were such messes, but we stuck together and there's something to be said about shared struggle. Like if you think about it, it's pretty common for humans. You'll go through something really difficult with a group of people. At the time while you're going through it, it sucks. And you're like, oh, this is the worst. But oftentimes it's reflected upon quite fondly. Like if you look in your memory bank, right? My memory bank says, oh, that was a great time because I was doing this thing with these people. And I usually hold those people very close and near and dear to my heart. At the time, it fucking sucked, right? And I think that's what I attribute that to. And I needed to go through the process of the 12 steps. And it took me a long time to actually find somebody that thoroughly went through the process of the 12 steps, which is a whole other conversation in and of itself. I had to do the work too, right? So the community part was great. I also had to do the work. And then I got sober. I'm sober nearly 20 years. And I still have to do work. And I had to go outside of AA to do work because the 12 steps was not healing my emotional trauma. Like that shit was deep and I needed other help to get through that stuff. Like I was sober, sort of like a figurehead in the sober community and very unhappy and very lonely. Despite all the work that I was doing, all the people I was helping, etc. My ideas about relationships were awful, so I needed more help and it drove me into doing more work. And so that answers your question.
With the alcohol and drug abuse, does that continue to be something that you have to work on? Like once you get over that, is it like a case of it's never gone, or do you get to a stage where like you never need to think about it again?
Well, if you see me with a drink in my hand, run for sure. Like get away from me. I'm a threat to everybody within 500 feet of me. That being said, I don't think about alcohol or drugs ever. Like every now and then I'm like, oh man, it'd be nice to smoke a joint today. You know what I mean? Like on a nice sunny day, driving home, smoking a joint and like enjoy the drive back to San Diego. That would be fantastic. That's not where it would stop most likely. So I'm not going to do that. As I understand it, I've been returned to sanity as far as I understand what that decision would lead to. So I don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about drugs and alcohol. Because I continue to grow in relationships and feel more connected to the people around me. Addiction is a disease of isolation. It's a disease of separation. People that have addictions, it's often it's a way that they can manage that emotion and get some sort of positive feeling where there's a deficit in connection, right? When people that are connected, there's no need to go to the substance. There's no need to go to the other thing. So that's why the community aspect of the 12 steps works so well to get people out. Even I know people that don't drink that didn't do the steps, right? I wouldn't want their life, but they're sober, and because through the community aspect. So yeah, addiction is very much a disease of separation, disconnection, I would say. When you're constantly, my life is focused on building connections. It's what I do for a living. It's what I just do in my world. It's like I'm out here building connections everywhere I go. I love just supporting people to go after their dreams, take risks, whatever. What have you been thinking about doing? And you won't do it because your family is good. I'll convince you over a lunch to go do that thing, and we'll deal with your family later. Let's take the risk. So if I'm in connection, I don't have to worry about addiction at all.
So that's what you focus on, filling that void with moving forward and helping people and connecting. Is that your sort of the way you keep looking in the right direction, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, there's a spiritual element to the 12 steps, which I would argue that the work of connecting people is a spiritual pursuit, right? Because I have to be okay in here before I can go do that for other people. So yeah, I take care of myself spiritually and emotionally, physically too as well. And then, yeah, everything else just falls into place, right? Just taking care of me so I can take care of others, right? The more I take care of me, the more of me that's available to go out and take care of others. If my bandwidth is running low, I can't serve you in the same way. I can't serve anybody in the same way. I'm running low. That's when I get selfish. That's when I go into scarcity. That's when I start getting up here and just hyper focused on all the things I don't have.
It's easy thing to do, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Achieving mastery through your martial arts. Like what has martial arts meant for you through your life?
As I said earlier, first it was an outlet. First, I just wanted to be able to rob drug dealers more effectively. So like that was the initial motivation. I just want to be able to hurt people better. As time went on, it became a easy way to access, look at my fearful reactions within this context. And then there's a place to grow through that and to reflect and to be with my fears, to be honest about them. And then a regular way to practice moving beyond them. Aside from just the technical aspect, like jiu-jitsu in particular is so ever evolving, it never ends. If whatever jiu-jitsu was like at the top level, whatever jiu-jitsu is happening right now in 6 months, a lot of it is going to be like kind of passe. The meta will change. It's not like kind of like the algorithm, right? It's like constantly changing and people are trying to constantly catch up to the algorithm. But yeah, jiu-jitsu is kind of similar in that effect. Like perfection will never be reached, but you do it anyway. Right. And I think that's just so cool. It's like, I'm committed to this path. I wrote something about that today. It's like mastery is committing to a path to some place that you'll never get. But you just do it anyway.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's true, right? Like I'm never going to truly master anything. I hope not. Then I'd be really bored. Right. Why jiu-jitsu is so interesting to me now. I'm 42 years old. I'm past my prime in every way possible physically. Right. But I'm still so obsessed with jiu-jitsu because the different dynamics and the way that the bodies interact and the evolution of technique and philosophy and technique that's coming all the time. I just think it's so interesting.
You've got a martial arts program. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, I have a few things. So I coach jiu-jitsu a few days a week at Victory MMA. And I really just do that out of passion. It just keeps me plugged in. I do enjoy teaching. I think it's just, yeah, there's an art to it. And I think it's important. It's also important to give back, and it just keeps me on the mat regularly. I still train pretty much every day. And then I mentor martial artists as well, like in personal coaching. So one of the facets of my business is that I mentor people on their martial arts process and how to use that as a path to personal development. they can reflect. It often ends up going past martial arts, right? It's like the martial arts part is there, and it's not insignificant, but it almost always reflects back to your life, and that's generally what we end up talking about. Because I truly believe if a person is to take like the totality of their life and make it a circle, I don't think there's any part of that circle that doesn't interconnect with any of the other parts, right? If my relationships are a mess, does that affect me in training? Am I getting proper sleep, adequate nutrition, right? Is my nervous system in a place that it can recover properly? Like all these things affect each other, right? If I'm not doing well business-wise and I'm under that state of stress, obviously that's going to have physical ramifications. Maybe I'm not paying attention to my relationships. Maybe I put training to the side because I'm overburdened with the stress of I got to work to create more money. So yeah, it's just it's a full system of using martial arts to kind of take a look at your whole life.
When you look at the mindset of an athlete, what do you see differentiates people that win and lose? And I don't mean just like one fight, but consistent people that are on a losing path, and you know, there's a number of ways to describe that, but people that are on this sort of consistent high. Like, is there something in the mindset of those people, and even if they win and they come back and they lose and then they win again, that's like sort of general themes I'm describing.
Sure. So I would say the person that's on the up versus the person that's on the down.
Yeah, it's a better way of putting it.
Okay. So the person that's on the up, growth mindset, they are adding tools to the belt, right? They are in a constant evolution process. Okay. So there's evolution or erosion. And I think that's happening all the time, no matter what. Even as we get older, right? If you and I stop, we're both pretty decent shape, right? If you and I stop what we're doing right now to take care of our bodies, we're going to move towards erosion, right? Naturally. Now, if we were in our 20s, maybe not so fast, right? But right now, that'll happen a little bit faster than it might have a couple of years ago. Okay. So it's important for us to maintain our evolution, right? Continue to grow. And really what we're doing is we're kind of halting erosion a little bit. So fighters need to do that as well. If you're not growing, you're eroding, because the fight game will catch up to you. The fight game's the same. Every 6 months, it's upgrading itself. Information's traveling so fast now. And belief. Probably most important, more than anything, more than growth, is belief.
How do you describe belief?
Belief that you can, right? And so if you're taking on a new business project and you're starting from the ground up and you don't think it's possible, how enthusiastic are you going to be about pursuing this project? Or are you just doing it because you think you have to? Right? Just think about the mindset that you'd be in there, right? So the person that believes is taking that belief into their training sessions. They're taking that belief into their lifestyle, like how they take care of themselves, all that stuff, right? And so everything, because of that, because they believe it's possible so strongly, the intention fills all their actions, and you can see the outcome that comes out on the other end. I've seen so many guys that were great at one time, they stop evolving. And because they stop evolving, I think deep down, they know they're not doing what it takes to really show up all the way. And so, and I've seen guys lie to themselves and put on that, yeah, they're excited. I can tell the passion leaves. They're not happy about showing up to the gym anymore. They don't love the training anymore. They're just doing it. The belief will crack because you're not doing what it takes to do that. Right?
Which do you think comes first? Do they reinforce each other in some ways, or?
Yeah, I think it's a vicious cycle. Right. I think it's a vicious cycle. So I would say the belief on the down end.
Because when you, like, let's say, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of people, it certainly happened to me, like when you kind of go on that downward thing, you then start questioning yourself, and your belief naturally starts going. And sometimes it's someone having a good talk to you and like painting a different picture, and then you kind of like re-believe in yourself. Oh yeah, I am doing the right thing. So
here's what I would pose to you. Think about these downward slides that you've had over the course of your life, right? It's natural. They happen. Why did they happen? What was setting those in motion for you to go on there? I don't think those things just happen, right? I think there's contributing factors, right? Okay, so where did my awareness slip that took me out of balance, right? Did I stop taking care of my health? Did I stop showing up to my relationships because I got too focused on money? Whatever the thing was that led you to the downward slide, it's like, no, there was somehow I would say values got out of alignment, and those values staying out of alignment for too long are going to create a dysfunction. And then we experience the downslide as the experience of dysfunction, like over a given period of time, right? And I would say, yeah, it's no different than, whether that was business or personal. For these guys, it's professional and usually personal as well. Because it's, man, for fighters, it's real hard to separate those things. It's not impossible, but yeah, you watch guys' personal lives and it's weird. It's weird when you're in your 20s, you can have a chaotic personal life and still kind of thrive. And I watch over and over again. I don't know if it's our central nervous system's bandwidth to put up with the chaos of that just starts to wear down as we get into our like early 30s, and then mid 30s really start to be affected by it. But you start to notice the chaos of their life is interfering with their career now. Like in my 20s, I lived in a gym in the most Spartan living conditions you can imagine. Like a fucking air mattress on a floor with like 10 other guys, and upstairs hot. Like we had like a picnic table with a hot plate and a microwave and a shitty coffee pot. And I loved it. I loved it. We'd get up, train, eat, take a nap, get up, train, maybe teach a class. And like, that's the life and like, when I was in that gladiator Spartan mindset, there's nothing I would have traded that for. If I thought about doing that now, no way. So that's the other thing that happens for fighters is their willingness to endure that kind of struggle also starts to leave. And I think when that happens, the shelf life on the fighter is going to get shorter. Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot. I've seen that happen for a few different reasons. Usually when they start making money, their willingness to suffer dwindles.
Well, I guess they also have a different perspective on things. It's like you see the light in some ways, and like, shit, this is possible, and so maybe your standards change or whatever. But I can see that, and I can think it through, not just in fighters, but just in people's careers. Absolutely. And anything as well.
Yeah.
Coming up next,
the highest form of expression of martial arts is being in the place of choice. With awareness, then comes choice. If you're not aware, you don't have a choice. It's always about finding a new possibility. As I continue to build on more and more possibilities, my world expands, whether it's jiu-jitsu or the rest of my life.
So you've got a performance mindset coaching business. How do you define success in mindset coaching then? Because you're just even this example that we just gave here, it gets quite complicated because there's so many different scenarios, different people, different goals. How from your personal perspective, how do you define your own success in that?
Okay, so success for me is, am I living aligned to my values in a regular, balanced way? That's success. If I'm crushing it business, but my health and my relationships take a hit, I am not successful. There's anything that you overly focus on, you'll have some results with it. If that's all I do but I put everything else at risk. And man, I think for men, dude, we have a lot more to do in this world than just make money. Like it's our job to nurture and raise more strong people. I think it's like really, really important. And so, yeah, I don't have kids, but God, if I'm just making money and my kids are a mess or my wife's unhappy because I don't participate in the relationship, that's not a success, right? So it's like, and if you were to ask these guys, do you value your wife? I think even if they were not doing a great job in the relationship, hopefully they at least value their wife. If they don't value their wife, then they're living out of value with being in a relationship with somebody that they don't value. So they're still out of alignment, right? So some way in there, you're out of alignment. That's like, okay, when we take a look at all the moving parts and what would constitute being in alignment, and that's every person's individual choice. It's not what I think a person's alignment should be. It's up to them. I can help them get clear on what that is, and that's really important. It's one of the best things I can do for people. One of the most powerful things I can do for people is support them to get clear on what that alignment would look like for them. Okay, now we're clear on what alignment would look like for you. Okay, now we take a look at all the moving parts and we get honest and we reflect. Does this reflect your values? Okay, it doesn't. Then we have some decisions to make. We have some action to take. We may have some work to do on some, some stuff you got going on inside that's keeping you from being able to live up to that. So I'm putting that in like the simplest digestible terms possible. Yeah.
What do you see are some of the main barriers to overcome? Because we've all got our own hurdles to overcome, and I like the way you described it, whereas you've got your success financially, business, relationships, other people. There's not just one way of doing it, and you can get out of balance. But when you've gone through that process with people and they've got the realization, oh, okay, I've got something with my relationship, I've got something with my business or whatever. Once that's realized, what do you see are the biggest challenges in people to actually be successful in resolving those issues?
Oh, okay. So this is really cool. Okay, so firstly, we start here, right? We start at A and we get to B. Let's say we get clear and they start making some really good progress on getting things in alignment. Who they've become at the end of that journey is different, right? Their values might look different at the end. So now it's time to reassess. What are my values now? My values today are not the same as they were a year ago. They're not the same as they were 2 years ago, right? They're constantly changing. Not all of them like so drastically, but enough that, okay, I have to reorient myself, my actions and my priorities accordingly. A couple of years ago, even a year ago, it was very important to me to train hard every day, twice a day. If I was to do that now, I still would like to be able to do that, and I could, but it would detract from my energy to serve my clients, grow my business, scale a business. I need energy to do that. I need focus to do that. If I'm training twice a day, I'm recovering from the training and that's it. So I have to recognize, okay, me holding on to this identity of fighter at 42 years old is not in alignment with the rest of these things going on, right? So I think to answer your question about what's the big hurdle, I think the biggest hurdle is the simplest. It's clarity. There's the lack of clarity. Once we get clear, I don't want to say it's easy, but it gets simple. Yeah, it's probably not easy. It's going to require some elbow grease for sure, right? You're going to have to put some work in, but it's simple.
And why do you think people struggle to get that clarity on their own? Because as you say, this should be stuff that we could figure out. It shouldn't be complicated, and yes, it is. And why do you think Is it because it's just having that reflection and sometimes you're not necessarily present? I was listening to one of your posts from a few weeks ago where it's almost like you're on this autopilot and you're not really in connection with where you are. Like, what are your first question really was, why do we find it so difficult to get that clarity?
Okay, well you with the for instance that you just gave, right, the lack of presence. All right, have you ever? I've definitely done this. Left your house to maybe go to the office, okay? While you were in the car, maybe you were zoned out, maybe you were looking at the phone, maybe you were just in another place, right? And you pull up to the parking lot and you don't remember driving there. Like, you just got there. like I did not pay attention to one bit of my driving. Right? I've definitely had that happen. I don't think that's uncommon. I think it's actually pretty common experience, right? Oh, all of a sudden I just appeared here and I don't remember any of the journey here. Well, that means I wasn't present to any of that. Now, imagine walking through our whole life like that, right? We're just responding to the stimulus that goes on up here, right? If there's no awareness of thoughts and emotions and that they're happening and that I can actually pay attention to them. And if I pay attention to them, I can actually influence them, but I'm just being influenced by them. So I'm responding to this automatic of just not being present and reacting to the stimulus that comes up here completely unconscious. And I have a really hard time reflecting and getting clear in that state, okay? So I think even when people meditate, I think oftentimes the practice of getting present is missing. Really, truly getting present, because it's only from that place of presence that I can get honest, right? So It's one of the things I take great joy in doing, is getting a person present so that we can see what's actually going on with them. And it's like, sometimes it's like you just turned a light on in a dark room and they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know all this shit was in here. You know, it's like, well, okay, cool. Now we can start, you know, putting things away neatly, get this place squared away so we can see what's what. So I think lack of presence is ultimately, I think people, if I'm just responding to the stresses of life and just constantly in a state of reaction, that's really hard to build off that.
Let's take this into I've watched some of your fights on YouTube and look sort of like, I wouldn't want to get into a ring with you, put it that way, but watch some of the stuff. How do you take that principle into an extreme situation where you're fighting? Can you be in a fight situation where you're just responding and you're not present? And can you be in a fight situation where you are totally present? And what, you know, if so, what are the differences?
Well, firstly, you can win either way, right? So it's not to say you can't win if you're not present. There's lots of guys that are just out there reacting and they win fights. For me, the highest form of expression of martial arts is being in the place of choice, right? And it's like choice that's happening without effort, right? It's just seeing it and understanding how to respond to the thing, flow state, if you will, right? So I think it's Stephen Kotler puts out a lot of stuff on flow state, and like it's the act of making decisions without actually making decision. It's just the information is coming and I'm reacting intelligently, but not from a place of thought, right? It's like the body has an innate intelligence inside of it. I think that's the fullest expression of martial arts. This place of like not being in the what if, not being in the unconscious either, like fully conscious and present to the moment. I think it's a completely different experience. That's a completely different experience to some people go into complete fight or flight and don't remember anything that happened in the fight. They're just, their body just goes into high alert. Their nervous system has not been conditioned to deal with that. And they just get tight, they get stiff, they get exhausted very quickly because of the adrenaline that comes through. Dude, if you and I go like this and we just hold it like this for 3 minutes, we're going to be exhausted, let alone a 15-minute fight. Yeah. So if your body just gets tense, right? And you're holding this contraction, dude, you're going to gas yourself out. So that happens too. That's the other side of the spectrum of being completely not present, right? Completely just your central nervous system hijacks you, right? Sympathetic and like, yeah, you're off, fight or flight.
So when you were in there, I was watching a clip just last night, actually. It came up when I was watching you about Stylebender and his, like, when he lost his fight and he played back the clips, and his opponent just seemed to see stuff that he didn't see. Mm-hmm. And would that be an example of, you know, obviously clearly he was more experienced, but would that be an example of where probably if you are in that situation, like if you're together, if you're present, obviously you need to know your shit as well, but you're just able to see things and almost like perceive, like see openings that maybe the average person can't see? Is that?
Well, yeah, I would say presence will definitely provide you with more opportunity. I think, like generally speaking, I think being present will provide you with more or present you with more opportunity. And sometimes somebody's just better than you.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes I showed up with a knife and you have a rocket launcher. Well, fucking sucks for me, right? I could be as present as I want and watch the rocket go through my chest. Yeah. There's nothing I can do about it. So that happens too. And that's the crazy thing about fighting, is sometimes you can cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and still get your ass kicked. It's the cruel part of fighting. And it's actually interesting because it does go back to mindset. It's like, I say this a lot, especially when I was coaching fighters. Just because you do everything that you can to prepare does not entitle you to win. It's because some guys get upset. They almost go into like a victim-y state of mind. Well, I did everything, like I should have won. It's like, why should you have won? You have to go in and fight to find out who wins, right? People get really upset. And I understand why. If you put your whole life into something, blood, sweat, and tears, all the sacrifice, the missed meals, the cut weight, you're not going out and partying with your friends, like you're missing things. It is a sacrifice. And then you don't get the outcome. Man, it hurts, right? But my opinion on that is doing everything that you can to prepare all that does is grant you the best opportunity to perform at your best. Doesn't even guarantee you're going to perform at your best. It just, you're putting yourself in the best position possible to perform at your best. And that's it. And you got to be okay with that. Like, and once a person can let go of that like kind of let go of the result and just, okay, I will pour everything into this to put myself in the best position possible, foregoing the result. I think it's a ideal place to put yourself in, mindset wise.
Yeah, because I'm using the fighting game or situation as an example of, let's say, business.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about presence, and you know, clearly we've described a scenario. Obviously, there's genetics and there's other things even within business. But from what I'm learning from this conversation is like, okay, you know, if you're not present compared to being present, like when you're present, you could be picking up on little details that can help you win in a business scenario or because I guess in business you're constantly making decisions, not just for, you know, a few rounds, like 24/7.
Perpetually, right? Yeah.
and if you're, if you're just driving the car, like you said, you know, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months can go by and you've missed all these small little details that could take you in a different direction.
Yeah.
Do you, when you're speaking to people or coaching them about lives, like how much time do you spend on helping people to get into that type of mindset?
Well, yeah. So we'll spend a lot of time building an awareness first, right? With awareness, then comes choice. If you're not aware, you don't have a choice, right? So you can only choose what you're aware of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
So if you're not aware that you're not present, well, that's the first thing we gotta sort out, right? Then, yeah, maybe we'll go over some practices of how to start building presence.
And what sort of things do you tend to do?
Well, firstly, it's like getting them aware of their thoughts and emotions, like what constitutes a thought, what constitutes emotion. Practicing a meditation of some sort, I find is indispensable. And so those simple concepts built on repetition to start building awareness. Oh, I've been having this thought, right? I'm not just anxious. I'm telling myself a story that there's some sort of bad thing that's going to happen that I don't want to happen. And they can identify with the physical sensation. Well, now they're present to a lot more than I'm anxious, right? They're present to the thoughts, the physical sensations, and the experience that is anxiousness. Then they can start to build upon that, right? So building that awareness, building that presence, the two go hand in hand, like awareness and presence, right? That's really important. And then also, like, to your point, you know, you have to make decisions all the time in business. And you could be really present to making the best decision you think possible. And the decision, I'm sure you've made some decisions that haven't worked out, right? Or the market changes. You were doing something that was working and then the market changes. And you have to take that feedback and make an adjustment, right? And like get present to the new thing that's here now, not present to the thing that was here, right? And that happens too. As we grow, as we start to shift through some things, there's changes that happen inside of us. What worked for me 5 years ago would not work for me today. And so it's like being present enough to myself and having that relationship with myself that I can start to see that. Do I always catch it right as it happens? No. Usually there's going to be some sort of, there's going to be a little bit of lag time where I'm feeling some discomfort. And it's like, oh, I'm out of alignment. I'm living based off like an old alignment in a where I'm currently at, and that's not working for me. So I don't have to beat myself up about it. I just make the recognition that that's what happened. I didn't see that, but I see it now. Because I see it now, I can start moving back into alignment, moving back into balance in a way that works. And that will shift always, always, always. That's what's so cool about jiu-jitsu is the problem is changing all the time. It is always changing. Even when you're good at it, the problem is changing all the time. I'll do a move or a specific sequence to training partners, sometimes 100 times with success. And then they figure it out. And it's so fucking frustrating because I was used to just dominating them with the specific sequence. It would feel like water just moving around a rock, kind of effortless. And I love that feeling. And I'm fixated on my jiu-jitsu being as effortless as possible. Even though it might look barbaric, like the feeling of just effortlessness as I kind of cruise around this person, And then it's not. Now there's a new challenge presented, and it fucking drives me crazy initially, but it also supplies me with just, a new level of mastery that has to be attained. My training partner figured out what I was doing. They got sensitive to that information. They now have a counter. I need to figure out another possibility here. Right. So that's what it does. It keeps you in possibility. It's always about finding a new possibility. And like, as I continue to build on more and more possibilities, my world expands, whether it's jujitsu or the rest of my life. Like that's the fun part. Like if I always do the old thing over and over and over again, my life gets really stale.
And small.
And small, exactly. So sometimes like when things change and I'm forced to expand and like grow into new possibilities, if I allow it to, it could be really exciting, or I can fight it and create anxiety, which is what a lot of people do.
Or not even continue with it.
Yeah.
Either. I was watching this video which relates to that. It was you talked about these feelings, because I guess we're all driven by feelings. You wake up in the morning, you either have a good feeling or a bad feeling, or you get to the end of the day and you have a good feeling and a bad feeling. And that, when I listen to that statement, it's like, yeah, actually these feelings, these things in your head are controlling what happens on a day-to-day basis, and there's obviously something impacting those feelings, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, and some of it comes down to this consciousness. But what are you doing to manage your feelings? Because you must have lots of stuff coming into your head which is like, I don't like that, I don't want that, I don't agree with it, but it's in your head.
Totally. Okay, so I generally can't control the thoughts that come into my head, but I have some say about what I do with them. So this morning, perfect example, I wake up, right, I'm in a scale phase of my business, as I mentioned before, a little uneasy as I'm moving into new terrain. I feel the uneasiness. So I sit down and I meditate for about 20 minutes, and all I did was just watch the uneasiness from a distant place, right? And like, I can see it and I create separation from it, and I notice my judgment towards it. So when I'm unconscious, I'm like, oh, I don't want to feel this way. Okay, when I'm conscious, I step back and I can just notice the feeling. When I take the value off the feeling or the judgment off the feeling, it's just there. The quality kind of loses its sting when I take my judgment off of it. And as I can do that for longer periods of time, notice my judgment and create separation, space between my experience and the judgment, then I get stillness. And that's what I'm looking for a lot of the time. There's nothing wrong with feeling good about something. There's nothing inherently wrong with feeling bad about something. None of my experience is based off of facts, not like a single bit of it. It's all interpretation. And I would say the same is true for everybody in this room. Whatever you're currently experiencing is an interpretation. Oh, I'm enjoying this conversation based off of my life's filter and how I've interpreted that's good or bad. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I could also kind of sit back and look at it from a different lens and just be present to the conversation without putting a judgment to it. And neither is right or wrong, right? For me, there's just a way that I build actual presence, right? A lot of times what I like and don't like is based off past experience. In fact, all the time it's based off past experience. It's based off my past filter. So if I'm unconsciously living through that past filter, that means I'm not present. And if I do that in a way that becomes pathological, right? Starts to deteriorate my life, overwhelming stress and anxiety that's not allowing me to show up the way that I would like to, that's a problem. That's something that I would want to probably pay attention to. And so I build that stillness practice, and I just got to be with it. And then I drove up here. I went, got my oil changed, and just did some things, and was just nothing glorious this morning other than being here now with you, right? But oil change, drove up here, got a cup of coffee, and just enjoyed these simple things. I enjoyed the oil change. Just, all right, a couple minutes to myself, right? Early in the morning, just out interacting with people, like being present to the opportunities to just share a laugh with the guy that changed my oil, right? Have a nice conversation with the producer of the podcast beforehand. Not in a rush. No, when's he gonna get here? No, none of that. Just being present to it. That's like, because a lot of my life is built up of that stuff. It's like, we don't just live in like one peak moment to the next, or these peak experiences, or it's a lot of just little mundane things, but there can be a lot of cool experiences in that.
Are there any things that Is fear associated to any of that?
Yeah. It's like fear is all interwoven into all this shit. It's right. It's like, I'm going to lose something that I have or not get something that I want is basically what it all boils down to. And it's everywhere. It's fucking, and especially if you have like, yeah, if you have a past like mine, there's going to be maybe a little bit more than some, maybe not. Maybe, dude, to be fair, North County in San Diego has an opioid crisis with the kids that live in that community. It's one of the most affluent communities in the world. These people have stupid money and their kids are all strung out on dope and fentanyl and whatever else. Why? It has nothing to do with how much they have offered to them. There's probably a lot of lack of connection going on. There's probably a lot of people overly concerned with how much money they have on top of all the other things that come with that type of affluence. A lot of distraction, right? These kids are fucked up and they're strung out and they're dying left and right in the most affluent, one of the most affluent communities that has ever existed, not just in the earth now, that has ever existed. That is crazy. Think about that. There's nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. So yeah, I didn't grow up with a lot. I grew up with a lot of abuse and a lot of neglect and a lot of separation, and creates a lot of pain, creates a lot of fear, right? It's like our basic human need of connection. When that gets jeopardized, it's going to, and I think that happens a lot, whether even when parents do a great job, they do a perfect job, the kids are going to have some fears because the rest of the world affects them too. It's not just the parents that we have, right? And yeah, I think it's each person's responsibility to learn how to not just deal with their fear, but how to form a relationship with it. It's never my feelings about the thing. It's my feelings about how I feel about the thing, right? And it's like, you can look at something and then you have your judgment about how you're looking at it. And I think that's the thing that can jam me up and jam other people up. And it's just learning like, oh, it's okay that I feel that way about that. And like, that's a part of me too. Doesn't mean I have to react based off that feeling, right? I can make a different choice, but it's there. And just to let it be there and not judge myself. I shouldn't feel this way, right? I shouldn't be angry at my parents. They did the best they could. Right? Well, no, there's a part of me that is angry and also a part of me that understands that they did do the best they could. They both get to occupy the same space. In fact, I'd say most people have competing viewpoints on a lot of different things. And sometimes, and they're usually, or oftentimes enough, they'll push one to the side or not allow one to be and not give it any breathing room. And I think you're asking for trouble at a certain point in time. That stuff, it doesn't go anywhere. It festers.
Does it help you to clearly identify the emotion? Like, because sometimes you might think it's fear and it might be just a lack of knowledge, or it could be like, it could be a number of things. But I, without that consciousness or presence, you may misunderstand some of those things, which you could break it down into something that's a little bit more solvable from an emotional perspective.
Totally. So I was talking to a client today and, she's an entrepreneur and she was putting off some work, and, her and I have done a lot of work in like some of her deeper emotional states around relationships in particular. And then, and we had talked about some of the emotional factors of doing it work. And then I just got into I'm like, you know what, this is probably not something that we need to go dig deep into your soul about. It's practical. Is it reasonable to say that you can work 3 hours a day to start getting this big mountain of work that you have that's overdue? If you work 3 hours a day for the next week and like focused work, would that put a dent in this to-do list? And for whatever reason, just mentioning 3 hours a day completely made it like tangible for her. I was like, and you're going to text me every day when you're done with your, gave her some accountability. Right. And like, I talked to her today and she feels so empowered by the fact that just by putting in the regular, consistent effort, not worrying about getting it all done at one time. So a simple, practical tool, right? It didn't have to go like super esoteric with her. And she got it done. She feels empowered. She has more bandwidth and she's built some trust in herself that, yeah, I can get stuff done when I tell myself I'm going to get stuff done. But she just was stuck in this state of overwhelm, and she just needed a little foot in the ass to get moving. And sometimes it's that simple, right? It's not all the time, but yeah, sometimes it's simple. And what we talked about is like, hey, look at this. Right now you're living in alignment with your values. And that's why you feel the way that you do. Not showing up to work for a long period of time is not in alignment with your values. And so, yeah, you're not going to feel good about that. And it's a valid feeling. Like, dude, all of our feelings have a purpose. They're not bad. It's not bad to feel anxious. It might let you know that you're unprepared to do something.
Yeah,
right?
that's an interesting point.
Yeah, right. So, dude, if you're gonna, I don't know, sign up to like a white collar boxing event, right? And you never boxed before, well, you better fucking be anxious. And maybe that anxiousness is gonna get your ass to the gym to learn how to box before you step into this fight. That would be a good, anxiousness would be a tool in that case.
That'd be very useful.
Yeah. Right. Same thing in anything, right? I'm anxious about this business deal. Okay, where do you feel unequipped going into this business deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Well, then what could you do to get equipped? I could know nothing about your business and ask you those questions, and you'll come up with your own answers and be able to solve it.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Because that once you go down into exploring that, it's a fear because of unless you're completely overconfident or crazy. But in most people, that fear's there. It's like what is it telling you?
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Have a relationship with your fear. Understand the fears that are based off the past, and understand the fears that are appropriate.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, because there's a difference between the two.
Do you sometimes get in your mind get mixed up with, okay, am I reacting to a fear in the past that's just not there anymore, or am I actually reacting to the fear that's here now?
Well, I get to get clear.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So fear is there, get present, get clear.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm practiced in, the system that I use to arrive at that point, then it becomes a lot easier, right? I was anxious about how to scale my business because I didn't know how to, right? So what did I do? I spent some money to gain the knowledge to learn how to. Right, so that anxiousness is gone. Now it's the anxiousness of stepping into that new version of it, right? The adding systems that I'm unfamiliar with and have to get skilled in and learn. And there will come a point in time where that language becomes very simple to me, and it will be like anything else that I've learned, and it's just become a part of what I do. My capacity has grown, right? And I think anxiousness can point to like where it's time to increase our capacity to do something.
I could definitely see how you can just quite quickly get overwhelmed and confused, particularly if you're trying to do a few things. It's like, look, you just have this high level of anxiousness, this high level of fear. That I get where the conversation can come, because it's almost like, okay, let's break this down. Okay, like you've probably got three things and you're rolling them all into one.
Yeah.
And you're lacking clarity, and they're probably 3 hours a day on this. That starts to kind of make a lot more sense now with what you do, and how figuring it out on your own can be quite difficult.
Until you have a system, right?
Yeah.
Once you have a system, then it's easy, right? And so the goal is like, and now she's figuring this stuff out on her own, right? And she's giving me permission to anonymously talk about her case. But it's like, and her relationship stuff, she sees her patterns now and recognizes, oh, I was putting the responsibility on past partners. Right. And now I see that I've been doing that because I was uncomfortable. So now she's taking responsibility for her discomfort and not putting it on the new person that she's dating. So she's recognized this old pattern that was not working in the past. And it's my discomfort that I need a certain amount of reassurance. But if I just overwhelm this person constantly needing reassurance, and they're going to feel like that no matter what they do, it's not good enough for them, I'm going to deplete them and scare them off because I've done this in the past. I'm not going to do that this time because I have tools to deal with this insecurity. Own it. It's my insecurity. It's not anything that he's done to deserve this, right? It's my responsibility. And just the fact that she can own that and now not put that on this person, right? Well, now, this relationship has a shot now. That's beautiful,
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. How do you link in fitness to this? Because the other thing I find a lot personally is when you do have that overwhelm. That's why I used to love working out in the morning. I can't do it as much now. I work out at the end of the day. But one of the things I find, particularly when we've been through the last few years, been pretty tough. At the end of the day, you go for a run and suddenly, maybe whether it's that personal self-reflection, but just everything seems a lot easier after doing some exercise for 30 minutes. Do you incorporate some form of movement or exercise into when you work with your clients in any way?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Right. So again, part of the value system is taking care of your body, right? Uh, your health, your body, your energy. These are all really important things. If you do not take care of your body, your energy is going to be compromised. If your energy is compromised, it's the highest currency that you have is your energy, because your energy is what you're going to put into your intention and focus, right? If your energy is low, your focus and intention is going to be low.
Yeah.
If we sustain that for weeks, months, years, well, the finished product's going to look a lot different than it would if you were taking care of that, right? So it's a non-negotiable. Yeah, yeah. You have to take care of your body. I mean, you don't have to do anything, right? If you want to live balanced, though, it's going to be really important that you take care of that thing, right? Adequate sleep, right? Stress management is even a part of this, right? Again, it's all a big circle, right? It's like it's hard for me to talk about the physical without going into all the other things, is because like, what are the reasons people don't take care of the physical? Well, it's the other things.
Yeah, that's right.
Like they get out of balance in the other areas, right? But yeah, it's absolutely like paramount. You don't have to be like a world-class athlete. You just have to take care of your body.
What's your vision now? Like where you've had an interesting life and career so far. Like what's important for you now at this stage of your life, and where do you want to go next?
So the most important thing for me the past couple of years was to really become and embody the person I wish I had around when I was a kid, right? And my mission is to do that for more people, right? Help people become the people that they wish they had around when they were a kid. It's really just to empower people, right? Like sometimes it feels like a corny word, but it's not. To like empower somebody is maybe take them from a place where they feel like they don't have power. And really what I'm doing is just exposing them to their own power. I'm asking them questions. A lot of what I do is asking questions. It's not me telling them what to do. If you're working with a coach and all they do is tell you what to do, it's kind of disempowering, because then you rely on the coach. I want people to get to a point where they're not reliant upon me. I don't want them to really ever rely upon me if possible, but to bring them into their own power, right? And again, it's just creating the awareness. And so through obviously time together and seeing what their particular life looks like, exposing them to their own power, to their own greatness, and letting them go bring that into the world. I think there's nothing worse feeling than feeling like I'm squandering my own gifts. And I know I could be doing more and I'm not, right? Or to think that I don't even have any gifts. That would probably be even worse, right? And then look at the result of that person's life. A lot of settling goes on. And so if I can bring somebody into the awareness of the gifts that they do have and how important it is. And man, it's kind of wild how often people kind of devalue their gifts. Even if your gift is that you're really fucking kind and that people like being around you, like, man, that's pretty valuable. Like there's something out there for you to do with that, for sure. There's something that we all have. Like, dude, if everybody was like, first of all, I don't know that I'd want to hang out with another version of myself, to be honest. It'd probably be too intense. I tend to get on with guys that are a little bit more lighthearted than me. I can be quite intense. It's just, I think about things quite deeply, and I feel them quite deeply. A lot of my close friends are a lot more airy and light, a little goofier. So it balances me out a little bit. But there's like exposing people to their gifts and help. It's not a small thing to learn how to be kind on a regular basis. No. Right? If nothing else, if you can learn how to bring kindness into the world on a regular basis. I never thought I would say that. Like my goal at 15 was to be a successful drug dealer. Like I had I was terrible at selling drugs because I did all my drugs, but that was my goal. Like, I didn't think I'd want to do that, but like, man, it feels good to just like treat people nicely, to take care of people, right? To support people, to help build people up, give people an opportunity to support me when necessary. I need help too. I need all the support in the world too.
But that kind of goes back to your original, I can't see where it was, like the, no one will ever understand the violence it took to be this gentle. And I suppose in some ways it does sound like even for your life, it's full circle, because there was probably, you were probably, or originally you had that in you, it didn't, It sounds like over time you figured out how to uncover that in you.
That's it, man.
And I guess for a lot of us, when we're not kind, and I think there's a lot of great stuff in the world, but there's a lot of people that are unkind. And when you sort of go down on it, a lot of it is probably a lot of us carrying around this fear. And the way to protect ourselves with fear is to be horrible or nasty, or to be aggressive in your case, because that was something that you naturally gravitated to. And I guess, what you're doing, if nothing else, if it gets people to realize that there's a kind person within them, what a great purpose.
Yeah. And I find when people are there, they're just in survival, right? When you're in survival, psychological survival, well, the focus is on me. How am I going to get my needs met?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get out of survival, right, you're in creation, right? So like you can't be in survival and creation at the same time, right? I'll let you use your own experience, right? When I'm like, how am I going to make more money? And it's like, I can't create a service that I'm going to give to the world. Think about how am I going to make more money? Right? No, I think about the cool product that I'm going to put out into the world that's going to be fucking awesome, that I'm really excited about. And like that energy, right? That energy, all of a sudden now I'm in service. I'm in creation. I'm building something to add value. And so, yeah, it's like, I get it. Those people are in survival. Even if they have a surplus of resources, you can still be in survival. It's a psychological mindset. Has nothing to do with your circumstances. It's a choice. When you have awareness, it's a choice, right? And I get in survival all the time, but I identify it and do my best to move into creation because it works for me. It just works better. I like it better. I enjoy the state of creation.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it is difficult when you're not in there to not see anything else. I guess it's that human instinct. It's that fight or flight, or the opposite to whatever that is. But when you're in that, just I guess your body. Well, I guess we all, even ourselves, just naturally want to survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's our main goal. We want to survive, and whatever it takes to survive, your body's there to do. But it's probably something that you're not meant to do beyond a very, very short space of time.
No. I think, we're kind of like one of the few creatures that stays in that state for a long period of time. A lot of other animals, they'll go into survival and almost like forget about it and just go back into the natural state of being present to whatever they were doing prior to that. We keep threats alive for much longer than they need to be.
Well, look, my final question, Eric, is Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and gone on to make possible. What would be a memorable example of escaping your own personal limits?
I mean, I could easily just go to being like a junkie, right? And like not being a junkie today. But man, for me, it's being a happily married man. I thought I was just going to like sleep with different women for the rest of my life and just like and I was like, man, I don't really want to be 50 doing that. That's kind of depressing, right? Like, especially in Thailand, you see all like the old like sex tourists. You're like, I don't want to be wearing Crocs and cargo shorts and like have some like poor miserable 20-year-old like looking so sad next to me, but she's there because I can afford it. I'm like, that sounds terrible. I'm like, that's I could end up there if I don't watch it. But kind of just making a joke. But yeah, like to give a fuck about people. My wife, my family, my friends, people I don't even know, it's like, that's crazy to me. I never thought that was possible. I didn't give a fuck about anybody. I remember when I was working in nightclubs, I had hair and I was good looking and very, very toned at the time. And I remember one of my friends looked at me and I was just there like kind of like looking down on everybody. And my friend looked at me, he's like, you are so smug. And like, I kind of took it as a compliment at the time. But it was really just a reflection of how terrible I felt about myself. I felt so bad about myself. And it's like, as time goes on, I get more and more okay with myself exactly as I am. Aging is a difficult thing and it's been challenging, losing my hair and, like just not, it's like, I'm not the same person that I was. And, the beauty of youth is gone, but also like I can feel more me than I ever have, and I can continue to be able to do that, separating how much money I make from my personal worth. And it's like, they're not inextricably linked, right? And that can change for a lot of different reasons and, whatever. But yeah, it's like, the the ability to enjoy life and like not be a victim to my past is pretty rad. And then to support people to do the same, that like you do not have to, just because your past was a certain way does not mean you have to perpetually just live that out for the rest of your life. You can absolutely affect and influence that and shift that and transform that into something that's completely different. And that's my experience. And it's not just my experience, but I've seen it happen, not just for people that I work with, but just people in general. I've seen people go out there, take ownership of their life, right? Take responsibility for what is, not what happened, but for what is. This is what I got. This is what's on the plate. What am I going to do about it? And then get to work, get some support. Don't do it on your own. That's the biggest thing you don't have to do that. You don't necessarily have to hire some expensive coach, but you can get some support. If you got a substance abuse problem, get with some 12-step people. Therapy is a fantastic tool to begin just being able to talk about it, share the burden, especially for fucking high-powered guys, share your burden. It's like, dude, just letting people know that you're human because they probably got the same shit going on. Dude, it just cuts it down so much. It's like, fuck, I'm not doing this all by myself, So a little bit of a ramble, but that's my answer.
Eric, thank you so much for your time today.
Cheers, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.